Every family has a ledger, an unspoken accounting of who gives and who takes, of sacrifice and of gain. For most families, this ledger is written in the ink of memory and emotion. But for the Brown family, stars of TLC's Sister Wives, their ledger was broadcast to the world for over a decade. Or so we thought. The promise was unity, a single financial entity. For women, one man, one family pot. All income was to flow in, and all needs were to be met from that central fund. It was the financial bedrock of their plural marriage. But the price of that promise seems to have been paid by a select few for the benefit of one. For years, viewers have asked the question, how did the numbers really add up? Today we're moving beyond speculation. We're opening the case file. We're following the money. This is Robyn versus the Receipts, the story of a decade-long financial heist hidden in plain sight. Welcome back to the Sister Wives crew. If you've ever found yourself pausing your TV, pointing at the screen, and saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense, then you are in the right place. We dig deeper than the show ever will. And today we are launching our most comprehensive investigation to date. The receipts matter here. And we're going to expose every single one. To join our crew and get to the bottom of this financial rabbit hole, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button to let the algorithm know you're here and subscribe to the channel with notifications on. You are not going to want to miss a single exhibit in this case. Now, let's get to it. To understand the betrayal, you first have to understand the pact. Lehi, Utah. The year is. The world is introduced to the Brown family. Cody, a self-proclaimed patriarch. His 3 wives, Mary, the SD and legal wife, Janelle, the pragmatic career woman, and Christine, the homemaker and heart of the family. Together they are raising children in a single chaotic, custom-built home. Janelle said, financially, I'm a numbers cruncher. I've always been the one with a stable job, benefits, and AK. My income has always gone to support the entire family. Janelle's statement here is not just a comment. It is the cornerstone of our entire investigation. She wasn't just a provider. For years, she was the primary stable provider. Her government job in Utah provided the kind of security, health insurance, retirement savings that a family of this size desperately needed. Christine's contribution, while not in the form of a traditional paycheck, was equally vital. She was the domestic engine of the Brown family machine. By managing the household and the majority of the childcare for children, she enabled both Janelle to work outside the home and Cody to pursue his Codiness. The value of her unpaid labor was astronomical. Cooking, cleaning, educating, and raising a dozen children is a full-time job for 3 people, let alone 1. Mary, too, contributed. She worked various jobs part-time and was an active participant in the family pot system. The system, as designed, worked. It was a 3-legged stool. Janelle, the financial leg, Christine, the domestic leg, and Mary, the supportive leg. It may have been wobbly, but it stood. This was the family pot in its purest form, each member contributing according to their ability and each receiving according to their need. It's a quasi-socialist model that is, in theory, the only way a family of this structure could survive. But this delicate balance was about to be shattered, not by a crisis, not by a job loss, but by a new addition who arrived with a very different understanding of giving and taking the catalyst of chaos. Enter Robyn and the debt. Robyn Sullivan, a divorcee with 3 children and a mountain of debt, enters the picture. The show frames this as a love story, a romantic expansion of the family. But from a financial perspective, it was a hostile takeover. Let's be clear about the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. It was revealed it was a profound act of disrespect. It was a clear signal to the OG wives. Your sacrifices are now funding my romance. The family pot was no longer about family needs. It was becoming Cody's personal slush fund to court his new favorite. The sudden, dramatic move from Lehigh to Las Vegas was presented as an escape from religious persecution. And while the threat of prosecution in Utah was real, many now believe the move served another, more clandestine purpose to financially restructure the family in a way that permanently benefited Cody and Robyn. In Lehigh, they were one unit under one roof. All expenses were transparent because they were shared. You can't hide a grocery bill when everyone is eating from the same fridge. But in Las Vegas, they moved into 4 separate homes. Cody sold this as giving the wives autonomy. What it actually created was financial opacity. It allowed him to control the flow of money from the central source, the newly acquired TLC income, to 4 separate households without direct oversight from the other wives. This is where the family pot officially died, and the Cody and Robyn Benefit Fund was born. Let's look at the evidence. The process of buying the 4 Vegas homes was a financial nightmare. It exposed the weaknesses in their collective financial health, but it also exposed something else, a clear disparity in how resources were allocated. Robyn, the newest wife with the most debt and the least earning history within the family, was somehow approved for a home just like the others. How? The show brushes over this with a vague explanation of family finances, but we can do better than that. Let's introduce an exclusive theory that has been pieced together from on-screen clues and financial common sense, the TLC income wash. The money from the show, which by this point was substantial, was the family's primary asset. Instead of being distributed equally, it's theorized that Cody used the bulk of this income to pay off Robyn's pre-existing debts, clean up her credit score, and provide her with a substantial down payment, all under the guise of making her whole, so the family could qualify for the 4 mortgages. This wasn't about fairness. It was financial triage that prioritized the weakest link. But in doing so, it funneled a disproportionate amount of the family's new wealth directly to Robyn. The other wives, who had spent decades building their financial lives and contributing to the family, were essentially used as leverage to secure a future for the newest member. And with the new home secured, the next phase of the financial shell game began. My Sister Wife's Closet. My Sister Wife's Closet was presented as a joint family venture, a way for the wives to earn money together. It was a beautiful idea, but the execution tells a very different story. It quickly became clear that this was not a business. It was a money pit, and it seems one person held the shovel. We've spoken to a former small business consultant who, for professional reasons, wishes to remain anonymous. We asked them to analyze the business model of MSWC as it was presented on the show. Their assessment was brutal. Anonymous business consultant. There was no viable business plan. The price points were too high for the target demographic. The inventory management was non-existent, and the marketing was based entirely on the show's fleeting popularity. From the outside, it looked less like a genuine attempt at a profitable business, and more like a vanity project or a tax write-off vehicle. A vanity project, a tax write-off vehicle. Let's dig into that. Whose vanity was it serving? Robyn was the face of the business. She was the one with the supposed design experience. She was the one who seemed most invested in its success. The other wives often seemed like reluctant employees. Christine said, "I'm not a business person. This is stressful. I'm not sure this is what I should be doing." This leads us to our second and perhaps most explosive insider report. A source with knowledge of the family's business filings during that period alleges that My Sister Wife's Closet was structured in a way that while all 4 wives were listed as partners, Cody and Robyn held the primary controlling interest and, crucially, were the main signatories on the business bank accounts. If this is true, it's a game changer. It means MSRs could have been used as a financial vehicle to do a number of things. First, to pay Robyn a salary from the initial investment, regardless of profit. Second, to expense personal items, laptops, phones, even portions of her home under a home office pretense, all under the business's name. It effectively became a legal way to siphon money from the family pot, which funded the business's startup costs directly into Robyn's household. The business was taking in family money, money from the show, and likely from the other wives' own ventures, but wasn't producing a profit. So where did the money go? It went into inventory that never sold. It went into a fancy website that was rarely updated. And allegedly, it went into the pockets of its chief operators. MSWC wasn't a business. It was a black hole for the Brown family's cash. And it was centered in Robyn's garage, the courtroom of public opinion, Exhibit A. So, if the family pot was being drained by this business, how were the other wives surviving? That question brings us to the most damning piece of on-air evidence from the Las Vegas era. It's time to open the courtroom. We, the Sister Wives crew, will act as the prosecution, and we present to you Exhibit A. The context is crucial. Cody wants to uproot the family again, this time to Flagstaff. He claims they need to sell the Vegas homes to do it. To justify this, he puts his wives on trial, demanding they prove their financial fealty by laying their budgets bare for him and the world to see. He thought this would prove his point, that they were all one financial unit. Instead, the wives inadvertently exposed his entire financial charade. Let's examine Janelle's board. It is meticulous. It shows her income, her mortgage payment, her utilities, her expenses. And what it shows unequivocally is that Janelle is entirely self-sufficient. Her income covers her household's expenses. She is not taking a dime from the family pot to support her and her children's lifestyle in Las Vegas. In fact, it's highly likely she was still contributing to it. Janelle said, "I pay my own bills. I've always paid my own bills." This is Janelle under duress, quietly confirming the entire theory. The one family financial model is a myth. She is operating as a single mother financially. Now, let's look at Mary's board. It tells a similar story. With her income from LuLaRoe booming, she is also completely self-sufficient. Her mortgage is paid. Her bills are paid. She is not a drain on the family's resources. In fact, she's a net contributor. And then there's Robyn. Curiously, the show never gives us a clear, detailed shot of Robyn's budget board. We see her present it, we hear her talk about it, but the cameras remain coy. Why? Why the sudden lack of transparency? The prosecution's theory is simple. They couldn't show Robyn's board because it would have destroyed the narrative. It would have shown massive expenses, a bedroom home, 5 children and her own spending, with very little verifiable income from a failing jewelry business to offset it. It would have been a board full of red ink, and the only thing that could balance that budget was a massive off-the-books infusion of cash from the so-called family pot. Cash that was disproportionately coming from the TLC salary and the earnings of the other wives. Cody's little courtroom stunt backfired spectacularly. He meant to prove the family was a single struggling entity that needed to move to survive. What he proved beyond a shadow of a doubt was that he had at least 2 and possibly 3 financially independent women who were propping up a 4th. The white bards weren't a cry for help. They were a confession. They were the receipt that proved the family pot was, for all intents and purposes, dead. The Vegas deception was a masterclass in financial manipulation, hidden behind the language of family and faith, but was just the blueprint. It was the training ground for what was to come. The real heist, the grand finale of this decade-long transfer of wealth, was waiting for them in the mountains of Arizona. What happened in Flagstaff wasn't just a series of bad financial decisions. It was the end game, and the proof is buried right under the dirt of Coyote Pass. In Las Vegas, the Brown family finances were fractured into 4 separate households, creating the perfect environment for a shell game, a system where money could be moved without transparency. But that system was inefficient. It still required Cody to manage distinct mortgages for sets of bills and the pretense of 4 autonomous wives. The move to Flagstaff, Arizona, was not about escaping a dying city or seeking better weather. It was the final, brutal act of financial consolidation. It was about liquidating all the family's major assets, their homes, and pooling that cash into a single controllable entity. An entity that, from its very inception, was designed to permanently favor Cody and Robyn. The Flagstaff fiasco manufacturing a crisis. Welcome back to our investigation. In part 1, we established the death of the family pot and exposed how the move to Las Vegas created a system of financial opacity. Now, we follow the money trail to Arizona. The reasons the family gave for this move were, frankly, ludicrous. Cody spoke of a calling, of a feeling that the Vegas market was about to crash, of wanting to live in the cool mountain air. These are not the reasons a family of people makes some multi-dollar move. These are excuses. The real reason, the prosecution argues, was a manufactured crisis. By creating an urgent, almost panicked need to move, Cody could justify the rapid sale of the 4 Vegas homes. This wasn't just a move, it was a liquidation event. It converted the equity the wives had painstakingly built in their homes, equity largely paid for by their own earnings, and the TLC money they were all supposed to share into a massive pile of liquid cash. And once money becomes liquid, it's much easier to redirect. And how was this liquidation sold to the wives? With a promise. The same old promise repackaged for a new decade. We will all live together. We will build one big house on our beautiful land, and we will be one family again. It was the Lehigh dream all over again. But this time it was a Trojan horse. It was a fantasy used to convince the wives to give up their stable, independent homes in Vegas and sign onto a nebulous future where Cody once again would hold all the financial cards. The tragedy is some of them believed him. The first sign that this was a con came with the housing situation in Flagstaff. It was an immediate and shocking display of a new financial hierarchy. There was no longer any pretense of equality. Janelle, the family's most consistent financial provider for decades, was moved into a small rental. Christine, who had raised a dozen of the family's children, got a modest home. Mary, a financial powerhouse in her own right with a booming LuLaRoe business, also found a standard rental. And then there was Robyn. Robyn and Cody moved into a sprawling home nestled in the woods, complete with 5 bedrooms, multiple living areas, and acres of private land, a home they would later purchase for just under $1. The on-screen justification was that they needed the space for their children and that it was the only rental available that would allow their large dog. These are excuses so flimsy they're insulting. Flagstaff is a large town. The idea that this was the only suitable house is statistically absurd. The truth is, it was a choice. A choice was made to allocate a stunningly disproportionate amount of the family's resources to provide a luxury lifestyle for Cody and his favored wife, while the others were told to tighten their belts. This brings us to a chilling insider report. A source connected to the Flagstaff real estate community at the time of the move alleges that Cody and Robyn had been looking at luxury properties to purchase for months before the other wives had even fully agreed to the move. According to this source, the rental story was a temporary cover. The plan was always to buy that specific house. They needed the cash from the sale of the other 3 wives' homes to make it happen. Let that sink in. The entire Flagstaff move, the pressure campaign, the emotional turmoil. It may have all been engineered so that Cody and Robyn could acquire their dream home, paid for with the combined assets of the entire family. The other wives weren't moving with them. They were being moved for them. They were no longer partners. They were the finance department. Coyote Pass. The illusion of a promised land. But the mansion was only part of the plan. The real end game was land. Land is permanent. Land is power. And on a windswept patch of Arizona scrubland called Coyote Pass, Cody and Robyn would execute the final stage of their decade-long financial consolidation. The family purchased the land for $1, The money came from the combined proceeds of the Vegas home sales. On the surface, this seemed fair. Everyone was pitching in to buy the land where they would all supposedly build their forever homes. The dream of the one big house was still the official narrative. But a dream is not a legal document. A promise is not a deed. And the deeds to Coyote Pass tell the real story. They're the most damning receipt of all. For years, the exact breakdown of the property was a subject of fan speculation. But thanks to the show's own graphics and publicly available property records, we now have the facts. Let's head back to the evidence board. The property was divided into 4 main parcels. Let's break down the ownership because this is where the scheme reveals itself. Parcel 1, approximately acres. This was put in Christine Brown's name, a solo owner. This is key. It gave her an asset she could, and eventually did sell. Parcel 2, approximately acres. This was put in Janelle Brown's name, also a solo owner, an asset that in theory belongs to her. Parcel, approximately acres. This was put in the names of Cody Brown and Mary Brown jointly. This meant Mary couldn't sell it without Cody's approval. She was tied to him. Parcel for the largest and most desirable plot over acres with the best views and access to the pond, or cesspool, as the family now calls it. This was put in the names of Cody Brown and Robyn Brown jointly. Do you see the pattern, Christine and Janelle? The 2 wives, who had proven their financial independence and were most likely to buck against Cody's control, were given their plots outright. It was a concession. But Mary, the first wife, was legally tethered to him. And Robyn was not only tethered to him, but she was given joint ownership of the single best part of the entire property. But it gets worse. There was a 5th, smaller parcel that was also part of the purchase. According to on-air conversations, this smaller parcel was also put in Cody and Robyn's names, giving them technical ownership of 2 of the 5 plots. When you combine their massive primary plot with this smaller extra, they control the majority of the land. We consulted a real estate attorney for this investigation, showing them the on-screen breakdown. Their exclusive theoretical analysis was stark. Real estate law analyst A theory. This is not how a family intending to share a property equally would structure the deeds, ever. Giving individuals joint ownership of the largest, most valuable parcel while legally tying a 1/3 to one of them and leaving the other 2 on separate parcels creates a nightmare scenario for everyone except the couple on the main plot. That couple, Cody and Robyn, effectively holds veto power over any future development or sale of the entire property as a whole. They engineered a permanent controlling interest. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake at the title company. This was a calculated, strategic move to ensure that no matter what happened, if wives left, if relationships soured, Cody and Robyn would be left holding the crown jewel of the Brown family's assets. An asset paid for by everyone. Think back. The family pot from Lehigh, Janelle's K, Christine's years of unpaid labor, Mary's LuLaRoe empire, the millions of dollars from the TLC contract, all of that time, sacrifice, and money was funneled into this dirt. And when the music stopped, Cody and Robyn were left holding the deed to the best part of it. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most masterful long-term financial betrayals ever documented on reality television. The reckoning financial emancipation through Exodus. A plan this audacious was bound to have consequences. The gross financial inequality, now literally carved into the landscape of Coyote Pass, was the final straw. It was the catalyst for the family's complete implosion. The departures of Christine, Janelle, and Mary were not just emotional decisions. They were acts of financial self-preservation. They were escaping a system that was designed to leave them with nothing. First, Christine. Her exit was a masterclass in quiet rebellion. Christine's fight wasn't just to leave Cody, it was to extricate her finances from him. Remember, her name was on her Coyote Pass plot. But the bigger issue was the house she was living in. The family had made a down payment on it, but she had been paying the mortgage. Yet Cody seemed to believe that the house and her equity in it still belonged to the family pot. Cody said, "We need to have a conversation about what's fair." His idea of fair seemed to be that Christine should walk away with less than she was owed, so the remaining family. He and Robyn could keep the cash, but Christine held firm. She sold the Flagstaff house and used that money to buy her freedom in Utah. Her ability to do so hinged on one crucial fact. Her name was on the deed to that house. Unlike the land, he couldn't control it completely. Her departure wasn't just a divorce. It was a successful extraction of her assets from a failing state. Then there's Janelle. Her story is perhaps the most financially tragic. Janelle, the woman who funded the family for decades, was rendered effectively homeless. She had hundreds of thousands of dollars of her own money tied up in a piece of land she couldn't afford to build on. Why? Because all of her liquid cash, her capital from the Vegas house sale, had been sunk into the Coyote Pass purchase and allegedly used to pay off the land in full. Let's pause on that. In a recent season, Cody made a shocking claim that he and Janelle had used their money to pay off the entire Coyote Pass property. If that's true, it's an even greater financial scandal. It means Janelle's life savings,